So I would actually like to start out because I'm curious. As you guys started making your choices about back-end technologies, what did you look at that you didn't like, or that was the false start, and the reason why it was a false start?
I'll go first on that. When I started working on this, I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go with it. I knew I wanted to try out Google App Engine. But what you saw there is like maybe the third iteration of trying out different frameworks that almost worked on the back end. My search space was not very large here because I had a pretty good idea of where I wanted to go with at least the server-side part of it. But I tried several early iterations of these frameworks, and they just didn't work. Okay, I tried doing the Facebook login through some Python libraries without getting into the JavaScript toolkit, and stuff was just broken. It took a lot of different retreads of this before it got to the point where I could get something that was working, and I could see that it's working on the front end, and I ended up doing a lot more in JavaScript than I thought I was going to do. And that was I didn't expect that. I didn't know that I was going to have to write this mostly in JavaScript and then have a thin layer on the back end to just keep the books, which is still very much a work in progress.
I would have expected that. Ian?
So before I took the job with App47, I had done a lot of consulting work around Google App Engine, so I'm a huge fan of App Engine. And in fact, my initial recommendation when Chris approached me with the idea was that we leverage App Engine. And well, and in retrospect, we chose not to go with App Engine due to ultimately the using Bigtable data privacy. With Bigtable, you don't own your data, and that's one of our value adds is that our data is the customer's data, so we had to be able to show where that data lived. I'm also a huge fan of, from a back end, Amazon SimpleDB. I think I think you'll notice a pattern. Zero maintenance is kind of big on my list, but again, same with Amazon SimpleDB was data privacy, where that data actually resided. So we ultimately then had to go for a platform that we knew exactly where it lived, so to speak, and that we could take on premise. We looked at EngineYard to host our Rails app, and frankly, Heroku's just easier. The video, but there was no video for Heroku. It was just the front page, like git push, and that's it. EngineYard had some video that we didn't even finish. It was too long. Yeah, we'd already deployed. We were live before we finished the video with EngineYard. As I said, we were both Java guys, so we did evaluate Beanstalk. I'm a huge fan of anything cloud, I guess I should say. And when it came down to just the frameworks available in Java did not have this is going to sound arrogant, but the elegance of Sinatra. I showed you the sample code. I mean, it was a PowerPoint slide, but the amount of code I had to, in one night I rewrote some of our stuff in Java just to prove it to myself that we shouldn't do this in Java. And I actually got stuck trying to parse JSON. Like I downloaded Jackson and then I needed like 28 other jars. And it worked in Ruby, so we had to throw out Java. We looked heavily at Node.js. I'm a huge fan of Node.js from a concurrency, scalability standpoint. At the time, and this is funny because it was only 10 months ago, Node.js, there was really nowhere to run it. There was no Heroku-like environment for Node. There was something called Joynet, which the creator of Node works for, but it wasn't there yet. And then also the libraries to interface with Mongo were just kind of, they just felt too new, like it was too risky, even though we're a startup. As Chris and I were talking about earlier this week, if we started today, I think Node, we may have actually built this thing in Node, maybe. We are building some components in Node now, so I think that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Good answer, thank you.
Could I just reply to that? That's
sure.
One of the interesting things is these frameworks are evolving so quickly, and sometimes the leverage you can get by adopting one of these platforms is so great that it may be worth it for you to learn the new kid on the block that you haven't considered before. No, I did this in Python because I'd done some Python in PBS, my previous consulting company, and I liked it a lot. I'm like, I could start writing this in Ruby, and that would be kind of cool, or I could, reach out and do this. But I want to minimize the number of new things because I had extremely limited time. I've spent, maybe 40 or 50 maybe 60 or 70 hours total on this effort so far, very part-time over the last year. So if I had a bucket of 5,000 or 6,000 hours, I would do a lot more exploration of the problem space and the solutions that would get there before settling, and be willing to switch too, because you're going to find some things you're like, ooh, the SQS, this is great, except I keep getting repeated messages and I need to deal with that. I need to switch to something like the Redis queue system that the guys over at GitHub put together. There's just so many different options.
Before I subject you to the audience, a thing that I found surprising in both of your presentations is this kind of multi-language approach. Ruby, Python, JavaScript, all of these different languages. Did you, as you started your projects, was finding people knowledgeable in these languages a part of your thought pattern? Was the learning curve of coming up with a new language part of the thought pattern? Or was it just, well, I don't program Ruby, maybe I'll just jump in and learn Ruby and do this project?
Well, certainly for us, yeah, it's I won't say it's a concern, but when we talk about, we look to the future and figure out who we want to hire. We don't want to hire a Rails guy or gal or an iOS guy or gal, because we do iOS, we do Android, which is Java, we do Ruby, Rails, and some people brand themselves as Rails developers, but that's a difference. There's a difference between Rails development and Ruby development, and we have them both. We're doing more Node. I'm probably missing a language somewhere in there. I think, and so then consequently JavaScript, we have a heck of a lot of JavaScript on our website. So I think gone are the days where people walk around and say, I'm a Java developer. I mean, I think those days are gone. I think now it's polyglottism. Even look at the platforms like Heroku. They support every language under the sun, right? But it is a concern because I know I can't find that guy or gal that knows all those things. So I think successful developers in this day and age are the ones that say, I have a background in Java, but I'm willing to take anything you throw at me. And that's exactly what Chris and I did. We had dabbled in Ruby. I mean, I had been paid to do a little Ruby years ago, and we just said, we're going to do this in Ruby. We partnered with the outsourcing company, and we built a team of Ruby developers. I didn't know anything about Android when I took this job. I'm still surprised you hired me. But now I know a lot about Android and iOS. So it is a concern, but I don't even know if I've answered your question. Other than I think these days you have to be willing to pick up anything.
It was very easy to find a developer who knew Python because it was just me.
Okay.
But the concern about there being an active community of people who are working in the same problem space or in a related problem space, that's a big concern, because if all people are doing with the language of choice is statistical regressions on CDC data, it's not going to be useful for doing the kinds of web apps and social media stuff that you want. Nobody's going to write their web service in R. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Good old language.
But if you're in the right community, that might be exactly what you need to do it. I'm a little surprised at your assertion that you can't just be a Java developer. What I've been finding is that there are still a lot of people, some here in the US, some abroad, where they really want just to be a Java developer or a .NET developer, and those are not the folks that you want to pick for one of these mobile, cloud, web dev sort of social projects. You need people who are thirsty to learn the new stuff and to master a broad variety of technologies.
I agree.
It can be very challenging. I'm surprised you don't hire somebody with one of those signs that gets twirled up in the air and just have them go sit outside Living Social's headquarters. Because the rumor is that they've sucked up a lot of the Ruby talent in the area.
Oh, they have when they acquired InfoEther and whatnot.
So.
Yeah, I've often said it's not really as important what technologies you know. It's whether or not you have a framework mentally to learn whatever comes, because we face relentless change. Okay, anybody have questions?
Do you see in the cloud world and sort of the X as a service where X keeps changing or keeps moving up the stack. Do you see that I don't know, replicating the componentization that has happened on the desktop? What I mean by that is, are people going to say, okay, I'm going to glue a search service similar to a web scraping service, to a such and such a service, and do even less coding than you guys, but it's still going to be a polyglot sort of thing. Is that a trend or not?
Definitely.
Definitely.
So I didn't even talk about, it was on one of the slides, Loggly. So one of our tenets, I failed to mention because I only had a slide that had 3 fingers, I couldn't find with 4, is outsource, so to speak, or I haven't even thought about this, but we're not search guys, for example. So go find someone who does search, write a service. So that trend it's always been there, but I think it's far more prevalent now in the sense of, I don't want to build a search engine. Someone's done it already, so I'll use Loggly. I don't want to build an ORM framework, so I'll use Active, Record or something. I don't want to build this and that. Everyone's already built it. I just want to build a mobile management platform and stitch it all together. Now, there is some IP in there that we bring to the table, but the generic things we just stitch together.
The key thing to watch for are libraries that are adapter libraries. As soon as you start seeing those emerging, it's something it's like, there's an emerging standard in this area. Like DBI and DBD and Perl, 15 years ago. Database independent, access methods for databases. You see the same thing with libcloud or Delta Cloud, with the cloud, the infrastructure as a service offerings. People who are going to build, multiple back-end capable storage engines. It's an emerging area, and being able to plug in one or the other is of strategic importance to a lot of people, because they don't want their providers to go down and then be stuck. Everybody learned some painful lessons when Amazon had that EBS trouble earlier this year.